I'm Josh Christensen.
And I'm Elizabeth Segran.
And this is Most Innovative Companies. On today's episode, we talk to Fast Company contributing writer Tanya Chen.
That kind of dilution of one singular type of ideology is really hard to break away from if you don't have more users to diversify that sprawl.
CEO and president of the global Gap brand, Mike Breitbard.
Let's say it's just been nice having the brand show up in culture.
And as always, keeping tabs.
I am just fascinated with what happened with Allbirds.
But first, here's the download, the news you need to know this week in the world of business and innovation.
Tim Cook will be stepping down from his role as CEO of Apple this September. He won't be leaving the company entirely, however. In a letter posted to the company's website, Cook said he transitioned into the role of executive chairman. Cook also announced his successor, Senior Vice President of Hardware Engineering, John Ternus, will be stepping into the role of CEO. The choice of Ternus has been seen as a possible return to the Steve Jobs era, when the company was run by a product guy and not a bean counter, as Cook has been called.
We wrote about this in Fast Company about the Tim Cook era of the bean counter. A guy who really understood supply chain, but I think a lot of the criticism of Apple in the last few years has been, maybe some product misses, some product design misses.
But that man knew how to make money. Apple's stock price has been all the way up. So it's like,
Can't
bean
complain
counting,
about that.
Yeah, exactly. Bean counting has some advantages.
On Tuesday, SpaceX announced that it had struck a deal with Cursor AI. The deal could lead to the eventual acquisition of Cursor for $60 billion. That's SpaceX's latest bid to focus and bolster their AI foothold ahead of a much-anticipated IPO.
Oh, interesting. So what is this AI going to do?
Coding agents. It's coding agent.
Okay, yeah, but do we really want our space shuttles to be running on code that may or may not be accurate coming from some sort of AI coding platform?
I think it's less about integrating Cursor AI with, space shuttle launches and more about just acquiring assets at a higher valuation to drive up their IPO. And Cursor is coding agents, much like Claude Code or what's the OpenAI version of that? Codex? Is that the name of their version? Which to me always sounds like an eyewear company, Codex. It shouldn't, but to me, I hear Codex and I go,
also very close to Kotex, the period brand. So there's
That's true. That is another thing.
A lot of problems there with their branding. They should have hired. Yeah. Live Nation, the parent company of Ticketmaster, will pay $9.9 million in a settlement for misleading customers about ticket prices, deceptive fees, and illegal pressure practices for a decade. About $9 million out of this will be paid to the customers, according to the D.C. Attorney General. Separately, last week, in a federal antitrust lawsuit, a federal jury said Live Nation has been operating as a monopoly due to practices like deceptively advertising low ticket prices without the mandatory fees that popped up last minute and not disclosing the fee information adequately.
This feels like a slap on the wrist for what's a pretty predatory company, in my opinion. I mean,
how many people have been affected by this? The $9 million is going to be cents to each one of the customers who is misled?
Who knows what it's actually going to be in the end of the day to each person. But yeah, Live Nation's going to continue to... this Live Nation and Ticketmaster stuff is always wild to me. This is why I don't go to concerts. It's just
Me
so
too.
expensive.
No,
expensive.
For real. Yeah, it just doesn't seem worth it. It seems like a scam.
And not enough goes to the artist. So that's a whole other thing. Allbirds, the sustainable shoemaker, is pivoting to AI? I don't know. I need to put a question mark at the end of that. According to an announcement last week, quote, the company will initially seek to acquire high-performance, low-latency AI compute hardware and provide access under long-term lease arrangements, meeting customer demand and spot markets and hyperscalers are unable to reliably source.
That's word salad, Josh. That's just word salad.
Basically, they're leasing GPUs. Allbirds has been suffering for a while, financially at least, and also from, having ugly shoes.
Style.
So that's just me. I find them uncomfortable too. I have one pair of Allbirds that I got
Really?
just like in a pinch because I needed like shoes when I was traveling,
Dad shoes?
basically. And I was like, these suck. this isn't the
not
place
working
for
for you.
that. But anyways, they're not making shoes anymore. So they had to do something to save the business. So I guess AI ended up being what they were turning to, which makes some sense. We'll talk about it later.
As Fast Company's retail reporter and fashion reporter, I have a lot of thoughts on this, but stay tuned.
Yeah.
I will bring this up later.
Stay tuned to the end of the episode. Oh, and they're changing their name. They'll eventually be called Newbird AI.
Gosh.
Cool. Well, stay tuned and we'll talk more about this later in the episode.
Satirical publication and 2026 MIC honoree The Onion said it reached a deal to take over InfoWars, the media property formerly owned by far-right conspiracy theorist Alex Jones. In 2022, Alex Jones was found liable for defamation after spreading misinformation about the tragic 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. He owes over $1 billion to the families of the victims. InfoWars has been under a court-appointed receiver who will be responsible for using the money from The Onion to pay the families. I mean, this is good news, right? I mean, this is a bit of good news in a sea of bad stuff happening in the world.
It's just, it's nice that this money will go to the families. It's nice that the InfoWars will no longer be a prominent, hate-filled media publication. And the Onion is cool. I like the Onion.
Yeah, making a huge comeback.
Yeah. And that's the news you need to know today. So, Liz, what is you have a child as well, so this, I think, back to school shopping is a yearly event for you, I'm sure. What is your go-to, I need staples, I need jeans, I need just basic, durable clothes? What's your go-to store for those?
For my kids?
For you and your kids.
Oh, for my kids. Yeah, totally. Well, okay. For my kids, it's so interesting. Like, I don't go to all the places that I used to go as a kid. Like, all of the big brands that once existed for kids and tweens don't really exist anymore. So we go to places like Hannah Anderson, an online kids brand, and another brand called Primary. All the direct-to-consumer brands are where I shop for my kids. And for me, I'm obsessed with, I don't know, anybody who knows me will know that I'm obsessed with this French brand called Segran. It's a small French brand, very sustainable, very beautiful clothes that are very durable. I'm obsessed, Josh. I need to take out a second mortgage to pay for my Cezanne obsession. It's really bad. I have a print story coming up, and it's about something that's not related to this, but I spent the whole article just talking about Cezanne, and my editor was like, what the fuck, Liz? So yeah, if you want to know where I'm shopping now, it's at Cezanne. How about you, Josh?
Man. When I was growing up, my back to school shopping was this place. That's one of the places that we always went, was this place called Bob's. I don't actually know if it
Bob's?
was a chain
Like a
or a local chain.
company?
Just Bob's. Just a clothing company called Bob's.
What?
Yeah, it's where we got sneakers. It was very it was cheap. You know what I mean? Like, kids are growing super fast.
Was it a national brand, or was it like local to where you were?
I have no idea. I'm pretty sure it was a local, or maybe like there was it was like a local chain with a few stores around New England. I don't really know. Bob's was like the go-to place that I remember, particularly for sneakers. And then other than that, it was Old Navy, it was The Gap, it was Sears or JCPenney or other big box stores like that. Yeah, I definitely was a Gap kid for sure.
And so like, as a mom of two kids now, I think it's interesting because, as I was saying before, like, those brands have sort of not been the main place I think that parents go for a little while. For like the past 10 years, they've sort of, these like legacy brands have sort of fallen out of consciousness. But I think that they're making a comeback. And that's like basically what this interview is going to be about.
One quick aside before we'll obviously have the Mark Breitbard interview later in the episode. We're going to transition, but one quick story about The Gap and how they came in clutch for me. So I think I was early on in when I first moved to the city, a friend was having a birthday party and they wanted to do laser tag at Chelsea Piers.
Oh.
So we did laser tag, and I went a little too hard at laser tag, and I ended up ripping my pants.
Oh no,
so
Josh.
bad.
Oh wow.
So bad. Like full like seam down the butt crack all the way down to like the knee, just completely blown out.
What move were you doing there that you ripped it
God,
off?
I don't know. Tuck and roll. It was bad. I was 23. Alcohol was involved.
Fair.
So I had to wrap a sweatshirt around my waist and walk over to the Gap on 8th Avenue, 8th and 23rd, I think. I don't know if it's still there or not.
Did you
and
find
got
something?
A pair of jeans.
Oh, good.
I did. I had to like jog over because I looked and they were closing at 8 and it was like pushing 8. And I'm like, got in there, got some jeans from the Gap
care how much
and got
this
back
costs.
on with my day.
Yeah.
So Gap came in clutch. Shout out to you, Mark Breitbard, and your brand.
Well, here's a question though. Like, so this is 2008, you said?
This would have been like 2013.
2013. Okay. What was the quality like? What was the style like? Were you
solid
into
pair
it?
Of jeans. Solid pair of jeans.
Solid.
Did me well
okay,
for
good.
that night.
Yeah. There you go. That's how you become a legacy brand right there.
More about the Gap later in today's episode. But first, after Elon Musk bought Twitter and renamed it X, Bluesky had emerged as more or less the best alternative for many Twitter users, or at least a left-leaning group of Twitter users. And then, when Trump won the elections in 2024, Bluesky had a 500% surge of new signups, or about 2.5 million active users on the microblogging platform at the time. It was looking like Bluesky was going to be a real viable alternative to what is now called X. Bluesky also championed decentralization that would let users have more control over their feeds and data. But today, little more than a year since that massive surge, Bluesky's user base is declining, and the very reason why it was so popular, being that it was a refuge for the resistance lib type Twitter users, maybe the reason for that attrition. Or at least that's what Fast Company contributing writer Tanya Chen found. Liz and I talked to Tanya about the rise and fall of Bluesky. Hey, Tanya, welcome to the show.
Hi, Josh. Thanks for having me.
So before we get into like the meat of your story, I have to ask, and I'll ask this of both of you, but I'll start with Tanya. Are you a regular Bluesky user? And if so, what do you like about it? What do you dislike about it?
Yeah, so I guess like to the tenor and the subject of my story, I was a pretty regular Bluesky user and I found myself naturally weaning off of it, especially in the last few months. It kind of corresponded with the assignment and like kind of looking into why that's been the behavior of a lot of Bluesky users.
Liz, are you a Bluesky user?
I'm not a Bluesky user. I got really turned off Twitter after it got taken over. And then it's exactly kind of what this story talks about. Like, it just felt like too much work to like start over, on a new platform. So I just never did it. And actually, honestly, like I haven't looked back. Like I'm okay to not be sharing my thoughts in like a few words on a platform. How about you, Josh?
I'm still on Twitter, actually. I'm still on
boy.
X more than I am on. I do have a Bluesky account. I check in every once in a while just to like see what's going on there, but it's sort of the same path as everyone else, but I'm way too on X right now.
So is it like the toxic morass that everybody says it is?
Yeah, of course it is.
Right, it's the same party.
Yeah.
But I think speaking to the subject of the story, it's still kind of a better party to be in than Bluesky, even with all the garbage that's circulating.
Yeah, it kind of feels like you're at a college party and everything was going fine up until a while. Like it was a little messy, a little weird. And then it's 2:00 and everyone's past that point of being like a little too drunk and should have gone home. And now it's getting real, like kind of nasty and you should go home. But then you just get one more drink. That's what Twitter feels like now.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Old Faithful. Yeah.
So let's just give some backstory on Bluesky and how it came to be. We'll set the scene as Twitter is sold to Elon Musk. He takes over, and this moment of where is this vacuum of people that don't want to be on X going to go? Enter Bluesky with this opportunity.
Yes. So it was a big opportune moment for Bluesky. Around the time of Trump's second election, when Bluesky saw, I think I reported like a 500% jump in user signups, which feels really on par with kind of the cultural shift and the fatigue that people were experiencing on Twitter, especially what we know now to be resistance Twitter, or like a very neoliberal pack, very left-leaning, maybe far left ideological pack of very loud, vehement users who are ready to leave and who are upset with kind of how unruly and how unregulated Twitter had become. And so Bluesky was cooked up at the perfect time. And then around the election, people were upset, obviously. And it was kind of allowing them to funnel their frustrations and agency into like a new platform that a new promised land, you know? So November 2024, a surge of users joined, which was really, really opportune for Bluesky. They had such kind of hit the ground momentum running with like debuting this new anti-Twitter platform.
Okay, so why do people generally, well, I guess why did they generally like Bluesky at the start?
Because it was billed as a response to people's frustrations about X and Twitter and how Elon Musk was not regulating a lot of the, for lack of a better word, garbage and slop and unverified just bots and all kinds of stuff. The wasteland of Twitter there. So it kind of allowed for an opportunity and a vessel for a lot of the loud kind of neoliberal, very leftist, left-leaning crowd, a place to kind of like a promised land, you know? And it was just very, very opportune at the time.
You mentioned that it got a 500% surge of new signups. And so did it peak in the millions in terms of number of users?
It grew a lot the first, like, I think 6 months. It peaked at somewhere in, I believe, 2025, at the top of 2025. But then we saw like a pretty consistent decline of new user signups. And then there was like several periods of flatlining. And now we're seeing a decline overall of users. So that's kind of where Bluesky, it feels like they're kind of a little bit floundering. They're kind of trying, things to kind of stay relevant, stay competitive, that we'll get into.
I guess like at its peak, was there enough of a critical mass for it to be, like a viable alternative to Twitter?
Yeah, it was. There was enough momentum and enough hype that it really was. All of the major posters on X were moving over. In fact, a lot of people were kind of shutting down their Twitter feeds. They were making big announcements at the time, being like, actually, I don't need to be here. Bluesky seems to be a viable platform that has legs and will support me better. And yeah, there are accounts that have entirely moved over to Bluesky, or had at the time.
And I remember it's basically like, I guess it's like, how do you define like an actual competitor there? And I think it was like tech infrastructure, like algorithmic, like prioritization, and then like user count are like the big things. And I think the tech and the algorithm are to this day still pretty good. Like if there's enough people like on Bluesky, like you can get relevant, like in the way that Twitter was like the latest of what people are saying. Like there was some of that on Bluesky, unlike I think like Threads or some other places where it was much more curated or like more evergreen. And like I do think the tech behind Bluesky is good. But then it's just like, how many users do you actually need for this to mimic what was good about Twitter in the past, which was truly, not to use this terrible phrase, but like the town square of the internet sort of feel. And maybe it's not the town square we want anymore or as good, but it's something still on Twitter.
But I feel like this points to this issue, right, of the critical mass and collective action that these older social media platforms have. And so it's just really impossible. I mean, this is happening with Meta, right? Like we all hate the experience on Facebook and Instagram, but there's just no really viable alternatives. And so it seems like, it was this interesting experiment because Bluesky, it looked like, was going to be this alternative that showed us another way, right? A way for us to continue having relationships with people on social media and participating on this new platform. And so it's kind of disappointing from that perspective, because I feel like it points to this larger issue, right? That like all of the big platforms that launched like 15, 20 years ago still have the critical mass of people to work. And it's just really, really hard to compete with that, right?
Well,
Right.
I thought Be Real was going to be the truth.
Be Real was really fun for a period of time there.
Be Real was what I was into it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm still mourning the loss of Vine, which is just shows
Oh,
how
yeah.
much of
Yeah,
a
me
core
too.
millennial I am.
I'm the same way. Vine, I have this like soft spot in my heart always for Vine and how they really fumbled it.
I know. It was great. It was awesome. I loved Vine. This is for another thing, but then this is a quick aside. I memory hold this, but then do you remember HQ Trivia? That was
No.
like
What
by
saw- I saw
the
that
founders
Scott
of
guy.
Vine.
Okay.
You know that
Yes,
Scott,
this is yes. Did you
he
see that
is-
TikTok?
Yes, he's imprinted in my like COVID just like memories. Like his face is
Uh-huh.
like to me just like part of my COVID experience. I not met him. I saw him when I was in SF briefly, and I was in a market and I like looked at him and I was like, that guy's like, I just like immediately.
Oh
it
shit!
was
You
crazy.
real lifed him. That's
yeah, because
weird.
his face is just seared
Oh yeah,
into my
yeah.
consciousness.
Oh my God. Well, let's get back to the meat of the story, because I think this all leads us into why did Bluesky not work or live up and is now like slowly dying a slow death, it seems. And it was kind of, as you wrote, the reason why it was popular is the reason for its downfall. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there's a few things happening here. One is quite ironic that like Bluesky is facing the same quandaries that early Twitter faced as far as like business, building revenue, sustaining culture. How do we get people to pay for it? How do we get it to be paid for so that it doesn't inflict upon the user experience? You don't want to blast ads. And especially with Bluesky, who has, like we said, built itself as being like a user first. Like we care about you as a user, as a person, and your experiences. We care about the things that Elon and Twitter or X neglected to care about. And so if you are making the algorithm better to compete with like Twitter's algorithm, for example, making it more sensitive, pulling people down the rabbit hole faster, gets people on it, addicted, and using it and retaining, but it's counter to their ethos, right? Of it's like hacky and cheap, and it neglects the user. And then if we look at the Wikipedia donation base, I don't think it has right now, that kind of loyalty where people are going to pay for it. And they're kind of scrambling, ironically, in the way that like every microblogging platform company, tech company is scrambling to kind of, how do we keep this authentic user experience for everyone that, the most devout users really still love, but make money and keep it viable. And then I think it's, how do we address the echo chamber, that was naturally kind of created. There's a congestion of a small pool of the loudest, most fervent, most extremist voices. And Bluesky has an interesting reputation of like very progressive and left-leaning and like very humanitarian, which lies somewhere very like important for me, ideological, like aligning ideologically. But because it's leaning so far in one way and it's creating the echo chamber, as you know, what happens with all platforms, that it's just a barrage of like the algorithm and links, and then what you're engaging with keeps funneling back into your belief system. So it's just that kind of dilution of one singular type of ideology is really hard to break away from if you don't have more users to diversify that sprawl, or you're not encouraging other kinds of users on the platform.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that turned it off for me is that it was very much just like almost exclusively like resistance lib politics content. And like, obviously we're journalists, I don't need to get into the thing, but like if anyone's listened to the show, they know like my politics fall to the left. That's just the reality of Fast Company in general too. But what I loved about old Twitter is that there was a great sports conversation. There was great like pop culture and entertainment. If I was watching the Grammys or the Oscars, there was like a lively conversation that doesn't really exist very well on Bluesky, at least not in a satisfying way. So it just became just like one thing. And it was just like, I don't know how many Krasenstein brother tweets or skeets or whatever they were calling I can read in one day. It was just too much.
Can we also talk about the CEO, Jay Graber? She was really interesting to me. First of all, as a female tech CEO, that was pretty cool. She was kind of portraying herself as an alternative to like the tech bro culture that was happening in Silicon Valley.
Well, I think that was also smart from like a business perspective because like these cult tech leader figures, like part of the cult of personality drive some of the business or,
Yeah.
you know, can go the other way as we've seen with Elon Musk and Tesla stock and Tesla sales recently. But that's a big part of it. And she played into that. Sorry, I jumped on
No,
your answer,
totally.
Tanya. Well, can you talk a little bit about Jay Graber and that phenomenon?
Exactly to what you're saying. She was a great figurehead, representative symbol, right, for Bluesky. If we look at the two leaders of like X and Bluesky, look at, you know, just like playing identity politics for 1 second, right? Look at their profiles. They're so representative of kind of the polarizing of like what we find to be, who we find to be trustworthy, you know, leaders of actually similar companies, of like, you know, quite similar tech infrastructure. But yeah, I think she stepped down, so that kind of signals a little bit of like shakiness, right? And of what might be going on inside. But at the time, she being the front person was incredibly smart and incredibly in alignment with the kind of branding and with the ethos and with the principles that Bluesky was espousing. One thing I wanted to kind of briefly mention in what Josh said about like ideological diversity, which is a big theme for breaking up Bluesky's culture. I've been thinking about in my reporting about like, I think you mentioned this, when you enter like an IRL social space, like a party, right? And especially when you talk about a topical issue, whether it's serious or not, there's so many topical issues right now to bring up at a party. It's extremely strange if we use like the Bluesky ecosystem for it to be only woke, serious takes. Like it would be so exhausting and so not fun and so not dynamic and not invigorating to be around. And like we think about, you know, space like that. And so that's why Twitter still remains somewhat more attractive, right? Even if you have unsavory characters at this party or who have like offbeat, edgy jokes or who are like making weird quips and stuff, like that kind of friction and diversity in a conversation and about a topic is actually really important.
I think this brings up a broader question of that I've always thought since this whole like it strangely enough reminds me a little bit and ideologically aligns with this like we need a Joe Rogan of the left sort of conversation. It's like we need a new Twitter. Hassan Piker is it, and then they get it, and all the reactionary centrists are like, oh no.
Here we go again, yeah.
But I think ultimately it comes down to like, do we actually need a new Twitter? Was that ever a reality that was going to happen? Or is like Twitter is what we have, X is what we have, and that's either going to die and then this form is kind of going to go away, relatively speaking, or it's just going to continue as this fractious, weird, toxic environment? Like, is there any way to replace Twitter? And what would that even look like? And I don't think there is.
The big problem was Elon Musk's takeover, I think. You know, I think Twitter was not a perfect company. It has not been a perfect company. But I think I don't know, when you guys joined, I was an early Twitter adopter. I'm someone who can't shut up. You know, I need to like be part of the discourse. It's the journalism thing in me. But I was early user. And I think I am pretty nostalgic and I'm reminiscent of a time when Twitter wasn't garbage. You know, it was actually kind of cool to be on there. And I think as we veered into like lots of people joining the Facebook effect of just like it being kind of just a wash of just like too much, we needed regulation. That's always been the story with tech companies that grow. You know, you need regulation of some kind. You need to have some kind of a principled stance against like, this is content we are okay with, even if it falls into kind of strange territory, and content that we are not okay with. And Elon Musk did not take that opportunity and did not steer that ship well. and just allowed for, just the slopification, just like I've been calling it a wasteland, because it is kind of, Twitter has become a version of Facebook where it's like anything goes. You can find really good content still. Like, I'm still on there, and I think I have a feed that I've closely curated and like niches that I find to be sensible, good, smart, safe, normal. And then lots of just noise and lots of garbage that I think a good leader should have wrangled or should have put kind of a kibosh or kind of rules on that he didn't. And so there was an opportunity there for Bluesky to, that's what they took. But at the end of the day, Twitter has the edge of just where the conversation is.
What would it take for the two of you to leave X?
I go through fits and spurts where I go off, but there's still like it's part of it is just like there's still like, I want to know what's happening on some of those less savory parts, just to know what the conversation is out of like professional curiosity and how things are received. And honestly, the biggest thing that's going to drive me off, obviously, like the neo-Nazis and the hate speech and the terrible, terrible things are, by far the worst part about the platform. But the part that is far more like permeating across the board is just the weird engagement farming and bot content and AI slop. It's just nonstop on their For You feed or whatever they call it now, if it's not your own like curated like followers and stuff like that. Like, that's the part of it where I can no longer get to any new information, even if I have to wade through a bunch of crap. There's still nuggets and pockets of stuff, like Tanya was saying, that are interesting, smart, safe, good, fine. At some point, the slopification shifts where it's just engagement farming and AI slop and bots, and I can't get to anything. When that functionality goes away, that's when I leave. And it's not too far away from that, I will say, for me.
Same. So what I will say, that, because I've been kind of meditating on this and comparing feeds, what Twitter still has that I actually do love is sardonic jokes, good memes. And also the fodder in between, like politics, seriousness, wokeisms, topical issues, and just trivial garbage stuff. Like I'm a Bravo head, big reality TV head.
Me too,
I love celebrity culture. I love all the things that keep me amused, entertained in between reporting on serious things and thinking about serious things. I need that, I need a space to shoot the shit, and I need a space, and Twitter has more of that.
Liz and I, like, we talked about this a little bit because we're just on like the side of the divide between like digital nativism from like early childhood and having a little bit of time where like all you could do is touch grass. And I think that's like a huge divide. Like, I'm 36.
I'm 43. Yeah.
I'm 34. Interesting.
I grew up, every minute of my life that I knew was on the internet and that sort of digital nativism. I think that is just a huge, huge divide into how we relate to things.
For me, the internet didn't really show up till like a little bit after middle school. And then, it was like slowly developing in high school. So I really I'm nostalgic for a world without the internet, actually. And I feel like for a generation of people, namely Josh, there's no way to conceptualize what that's even like, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because like I'm thinking now of my kids and the world that they're living in, and whether it's possible now for me to try and at least create for them for a little while, like a kind of analog world. And I think it's interesting because, I think maybe the reason that I was kind of happy to hop off of X was for this reason. And now I just can't wait to like, cut my ties with the other social media. It's interesting how sticky they are, right? Because for me, it's like, it's Instagram and Facebook, and there are still people there that communicate with me on those platforms, and like relatives and other, people who are there. But I think like as the slop takes over, and increasingly now with AI, it's just becoming less and less appealing. And that the stickiness that you're talking about, like the decades of just habit formation, right? At some point, that's going to break. And I also wonder with just AI as like an alternative place for us to be spending our time, whether the era of social media will eventually come to an end. That's kind of what I'm hoping for, to be honest.
Honestly, it's been an interesting conversation because, sorry if this takes us a little bit of veering off the topic again, but I've been thinking about it, and I was kind of tweeting about this earlier because a lot of a lot of online people, I consider myself very online. Josh is probably very online. I am kind of coming up on like becoming so overwhelmed by the shouting and the noise and the slop that I have to like once a day very dramatically turn it all off. Like it's just so crazy now. And I think Josh and I are more, I think, nostalgic to a bygone internet era that wasn't this maddening. And it sucks because I feel like we had experienced a time where being online wasn't so corrosive.
Yeah.
And actually even invigorating. I feel like as someone who is like has such a crazy thirst or appetite to kind of just like see what's out there, the internet is great for that. But now when you spend too much time, it is like, oh my gosh, I go crazy because everyone's shouting. There is such a desperate clamor for attention by any means possible right now.
Well, I think the shift that you're talking about, and ultimately what I was talking about with like the slop and engagement farming, is that like when the platforms shift from interactive, like truly social media to something more voyeuristic, to something that is performative, that is content creation, I think that shifts into something different. And if I want that, I'm generally going to TikTok or I'm going to YouTube or places where I'm going to consume content. In terms of like true social media, when it's AI slop you're engaging in, that cuts out the social interaction part of it. That's what, as cringe as it was on MySpace and Facebook in the early days and Instagram, it's what made those platforms, and particularly with Twitter, so attractive, is that you could be part of a conversation, like literally, not just in the sense of like, oh, we're all in the town square having this big conversation. No, literally, you could interact and tweet at someone and respond back and people would interact with you. That's so hard now.
And it was democratizing in that I remember early Twitter, I was tweeting at celebrities. They were tweeting back, because we were all just people and it was kind of a crazy time. Yeah.
Yeah, celebrities were out there being like, oh man, are birds crazy? And you're like, yeah, man, that's great, Miley Cyrus. And that was awesome.
They would just tweet at you. Yeah, it was so fun. I remember I actually like met up with like a few like micro famous people in New York City at the time because I was like on Twitter and we were able to connect in a way that I think that was kind of the secret sauce and the magic of like early Twitter days.
And to bring it back to Bluesky of where we are, I think they had an idea of refostering that, but it just never quite got there.
It is kind of that sad, obvious story that like you can build a new tech company that has good morals and better ethics and whatever, but it's still a tech company.
Yeah.
And it's still within this kind of world and framework that is really hard to govern and make money off of and to wrangle. And we're still hopeful that it could happen, or we are right now resigned that maybe this is not the best way to be having discourse. Maybe the town hall, like fantasy, like can only happen in a vacuum, like can only happen in like one safe thread on Reddit, like one normal thread on Reddit or one corner of the internet. I don't know if it's possible right now. Like as a tech journalist, I think about all the time, like, could it be possible to simulate, like have, civil discourse about I don't think so. I think right now humanity has taught us we have so much more to go.
Oof.
Yeah.
Well, catch me on Be Real. Okay, we're going to take a break. We'll be back with Tanya for Keeping Tabs, but first, a quick break followed by Liz's interview with Gap Global Brand CEO and President Mark Breitbard. When I was growing up, the Gap wasn't trendy or fashion forward. It was a place you went to get affordable staples. Need a new pair of jeans? Go to the Gap. Getting cold and need a basic hoodie? Go to the Gap. For many years, that kind of boring reliability served them well. But in recent years, with the continued rise of ultra-cheap fast fashion, the brand started to struggle. So they set out, at least partly, to reinvent themselves. This started with leadership. They hired Richard Dixon from Mattel, who had turned Barbie into a phenomenon. They brought on Zach Posen as its new creative director. Then it launched an elevated sub-brand, Gap Studio, and it started embracing collaborations like the ones with Doen and Cult Gaia. Gap has successfully repositioned the brand as both the old reliable and the new elevated fashion-forward brand. For this episode, Liz talked to Mike Breitbard, the president and CEO of Global Gap Brand, all about this strategy and a new collaboration with Victoria Beckham. Here's that conversation.
Mark, thank you so much for being here in the studio with us.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
We've been tracking a lot of your work over the past 5 years, but this is the first time that you're here with us in studio, so we're really excited to dig into all of it.
Well, we're excited to be here. There's been so much going on in the brand, and I know we've been having conversations about it, but it's nice to be live finally.
Yeah, well, to hit on some very recent news, first of all, let's talk about what's going on at Coachella, because I hear that you guys have hoodie
house.
a hoodie house, the hoodie activation. Let's just start there. What's going on at Coachella right now?
Well, music's been a big part of the brand for years, and we were at Outside Lands, and this year we are the official apparel sponsor of Coachella.
Amazing.
And so we have our hoodies available kind of at concession merch, but we have a hoodie house where you can customize a Coachella Gap hoodie.
Amazing.
And add charms, and it's been really fun, really well received, massive lines, and mostly it's just been nice having the brand show up in culture, show up at that kind of activation.
Yeah.
And it's felt very authentic and very natural, and I had to go, of course.
Yeah, what was it like? What
No,
was it like
had
when
to
you were
go.
there?
It's incredible. The amount of people that pack themselves in is just incredible to see, and the scale of Coachella and what they do and the turnout, and also the amount of expression coming out of it. I mean, when you look at how much your social media feed is taken over by Coachella during this weekend, it was amazing to see and be part of.
I mean, I think it's an interesting point because there's been much made of the fact that we live in this time when all of our social media feeds mean that we're sort of like in different bubbles. There isn't monoculture anymore. And yet, over the last couple of years, you've been able to really create or, be part of a monocultural moment. I think Cat's Eye was one thing that a lot of people remember, but there have been others too. So what's going on there? How are you making this happen? What's the magic there?
There's a lot to the special sauce.
Yeah.
I don't look at it as one thing. I mean, I think we do have big ideas every season, but the way we approach the ideas, whether it's Cat's Eye or other campaigns, we're taking Gap and making it yours. We're making it your own. And Cat's Eye was lightning in a bottle. We had this incredibly talented group of women from all over the world, really different backgrounds. And that song remix, Better in Denim, it just caught fire. But we're moving quickly. We're serving up the brand in new ways to new audiences every day in a way that feels incredibly authentic to the brand.
Over the last 4 years, we've really seen Gap really enter the center of culture again. And I think a lot of people have observed this. A lot of people are really interested in what's happening. But I think that actually part of what makes this an interesting story is that you were actually doing a lot of work behind the scenes that's a lot less glamorous than these kind of social media moments, right? In order to create the foundation for Gap to shine right now. And so as a retail reporter, as a business reporter, I'm really interested in that. So when you came into Gap Brand in 2021, what did you see in front of you and what were your instincts?
Yeah, I've been in the brand a long time before. So I started my formative years in my career were late 90s. Mickey Drex was still in the brand. And I always had this Gap in my DNA, a Gap in my blood. And what
was it like then? Like what did it mean?
That was heyday. There was energy. It was innovation, driving culture. And, I'd seen that. I'd seen that energy. And, you never go backwards. You have to go forward, but we have to leverage the energy we've had in the past. And I knew we could reclaim that. Even in 2020, coming back into the brand, there's incredibly high awareness, high affinity. People liked the brand. It just was irrelevant. It was irrelevant to younger people. The over-assorted, quality had eroded, all of the things that happened to over-stored, losing money in markets around the world. And so I began really with this cleanup for 18 to 24 months and reinvesting in quality, removing 25% of the styles in the store, a couple of reductions in force to remove layers on the team, shrink the team, to remove bureaucracy and allow the people who were there to move much faster, be more responsive, be more entrepreneurial. And then we closed 350 stores. We moved markets, UK, France, Italy, new partner in India, removed the China business, sold to a partner, Baoshan. So all of that I can just rattle off, but that's 18, 24 months of very heavy lift. But with that foundation reset, we could start the process of better quality and better creative and amazing creative talent in the brand set free to just be creative and be innovative.
Having tracked that period in retail history, I mean, I don't think that you were the only company that was dealing with, I guess there was just a lot of bloat, right? I mean, I think to sort of oversimplify what was happening. Having sort of observed all of that, you were in the retail industry throughout this period. What was happening there? Like, why was it that the retail industry had sort of become sluggish like that? Like, how did that happen in the first place?
Well, I think people often talk about retail as being cyclical. There is a way to fight through that. And I think the brand got stale over time and overstored. And when the brand was in its heyday, all these other brands, international players, the value players, the off-price players, the e-commerce players, like all these big groups now that are formidable retail drivers weren't there. And I think it's hard to reinvent yourself. People tend to protect their legacy assets versus reinventing them and pushing and saying, look, if you don't reinvent yourself, someone else is going to reinvent it for you. And I think that is at the heart of what we do. We have to reinvent what we do every day. And if we ever stop doing that, there's just too many other places and the customer moves incredibly fast. And what I'm really proud of in Gap is we've now set it up to move at the speed of the consumer, to move at the speed of culture, to be deep in the cultural conversation. And now the goal is when we're in this zone and we're cooking to stay in the zone and keep moving just as fast.
When I write about retail and I talk to big companies, this is like almost too big of a challenge to kind of go back into the supply chain and streamline and sort of cut things out. I've talked to many brands and it's like, this is just kind of how we're doing it now. Let's just like keep things going. So I think it's unusual for a leader to be focused on all of these different things, including the supply chain. That's like kind of getting into the weeds, thinking about factories, thinking about design. Was that hard? I mean, 18 months seems like not that long of a time to be working on this kind of streamlining. So tell me what you were doing and how you got in the weeds there.
Well, I do feel that I'm hardwired to be right brain, left brain. I'm hardwired to be obsessed with the execution and discipline and financial rigor and all of those things, while at the same time pushing creative, pushing great product stories, great creative that gets us very excited with the creative teams. But I'll say we have a playbook. We have a playbook about what our purpose is, what our product big idea, how we're going to tell that story with relevance, what the experience looks like with online, omni, in store, and then obsessive execution, where everyone on the team knows these are the big things that have to work for us to make this win. And I think when we are very focused, it actually becomes easier. The less focused we are about what we're selling, about the product stories we're telling, the harder it is to win because no one knows exactly what they need to compete. When we say it's about this leg shape and it's get loose, or when we're launching Cat's Eye, better in denim in this way, everyone knows it's denim. These are the key styles. Here's what we're trying to sell. Here's how we're going to have the replenishment. Here's how we're going to have denim fabric lined up so that we can cut into the styles that are working and bring them in on highly responsive, supply chain. So while it is required to be all over this part of the business in order to execute, it becomes easier with focus.
One thing that I read that was really interesting is that you're really granular with thinking about trying to operate quickly. And one of those things is how you handle meetings, which I think is something that we're all familiar with. There are a lot of meetings on our calendars, and sometimes we don't know why. Why? And so that's something that, when multiplied across the scale of a business, is something that slows people down. That's just like one example. So tell us about your meeting philosophy and why that's important.
Well, I think it's fun to talk about because meetings tend to be the thing that drags everyone down in a company.
For
It's just
sure.
too many meetings. They're not moving fast enough. Why are we here? And I'm not so aggressive that I say every meeting has to have these 3 things and you have to declare in advance and send me the agenda. I'm not like that, but I'm just very aggressive about what are we trying to solve right now? And is everything we're doing and discussing getting us to that solution, or is it not? I'm also aggressive about ending the meeting when we get there. When I hear people say, well, we have 4 more minutes, so I say, we don't have 4 more minutes. If we solve it, we're all out of here. And I also tend to really scrutinize who is in the meeting. And should I be there? Who should be in it, so that we don't have this meeting bloat that happens. And I gave the example at a talk I did where I walked into a meeting and someone said, oh, are you in this meeting? And I said, I'm not anymore. I mean, if you're asking if I'm in the meeting, then I clearly don't need to be in the meeting.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah. And so if other people can handle it, they should handle it.
Yeah.
And I think, these weekly meetings become ruinous to a culture.
Yeah, especially when they're multiplied, across every single day. I think it's really interesting that you're being so innovative in this way. I think another part of the story is that over the last 10, 15 years, there has been the direct-to-consumer movement, right? There were all of these other brands that popped up. And for a while, I think they were really innovative, particularly when compared against the legacy players, right? Which had all of this brand recognition. These small, scrappy brands really had to fight. And so they were pretty innovative. But, we've seen over the last couple of years that it's really hard for many of those brands to transition and to sort of get to scale. And I think that actually creates some space now for the legacy players to come back. And we're seeing this with Gap. We're seeing this with a couple of other brands, Brooks Brothers, other brands that are just trying to reclaim that kind of share of the market again. Would you agree with that you're seeing this pattern too?
I see the pattern where the direct-to-consumer sort of new entrants often have an interesting story to tell. It's often a founder-centric story, and they are able to build the brand and scale to a certain extent. I think it becomes hard at some level. If it's 85 million, they build to 100 million, it feels like, wow, we really have momentum. But they realize they're not profitable even, and things get more difficult and more difficult to scale. I think in our case, it's really about innovation and staying young and staying hungry. We need to be a scrappy, founder-led. I mean, we are a family business. We're a public company, but the Fisher family, Don and Doris, started the company in 1969, and a lot of the culture and a lot of things they built are still in the company today if we celebrate them and honor it and allow it to be there. And so we need to have the founder's mindset in our company. And then I think to your point about having this opportunity again, I think having the scale and the brand awareness and the brand affinity that we have does allow us that if we start cooking, we can really turn it on well. And we just have to do it consistently. So I do think that is an opportunity.
Yeah, totally. And so part of your job has been basically to come in and streamline the business, make sure that you're operating at your best. And before we get back into this conversation about being in the culture, I want to talk about the clothes, because I do think that that's a huge part of the story. And it may be underreported because there's so many other things that are exciting to talk about. But I do think that in order for all of these other cultural activations to work, you have to have product that people love. And you mentioned that, there had been bloat, like you were used to sort of going into a Gap store and then finding a lot of stuff that was just kind of on the sales rack, right? Not that exciting. So tell me about, what you were seeing at the brand and what you've been doing to sort of make sure that the clothes that you are making are clothes that I really want to wear, which is actually a true statement.
Listen, I think you're getting to the heart of the issue, which is, in the end, we need to sell clothes and apparel, accessories that people want, that looks great on them, that's flattering, versatile. And people have an emotional connection. It's how you feel when you dress up. Do you go and you feel like you've got energy, you got a vibe that you want? And when you're over assorted, it becomes too bureaucratic. I think you start to lose some of the essence of what we're trying to sell. And that's what I found. So I think by eliminating 25% of the assortment, reinvesting in quality, and really ensuring that every single piece is considered. Every single piece has the right detail, the right wash, the right detail, technical details and specs and fit. All of those things matter. But for me also as a merchant, growing up in the company as a merchant, the art of the edit, the stories we're trying to tell, big ideas every season. I mean, for me, there's a reason why collabs work. It's this tight capsule that adds punch to the stories we're telling. There's a reason we go big on big ideas that are seasonal, like linen. We did a Linen Moves campaign with Tyla. We did with Troye Sivan the Get Loose, all about looser fitting jeans. That was like a big moment for us to make a declarative statement about where the jean leg shape is moving. And then the same with Better in Denim. Like, this is low rise, it's denim dressing, here's cat's eye. So, and of
Parker
course,
Posey.
Parker Posey in spring. And then our most recent campaign with Young Miko and Sweats Like This is a statement about the sweat category. So it's about quality, it's about edit, it's about focus, and then styling is huge too, and ensuring that the clothes look young and with the right energy.
But you are making a very clear connection between that person and the garment, right, that you're trying to sort of promote at that moment. How are you thinking about all of this? Like, how are you deciding kind of what the next, like, how did you decide that sweats were the thing to focus on and that Young Miko was the right spokesperson to sort of make that happen?
We have a multi-step process, but really we're living, breathing with the consumer and living, breathing in our business. So we know every season we have big ideas and we do it as part of our creative process on developing product. And when we're doing it, we have a concept team that's out in market. We have consumer insights coming in that are giving us data. We have marketing team that's also deeply involved on brand thinking, and then product teams doing design. And all those teams come together to map out the seasons. And we're working on spring of 27. We're working on holiday of 2026. And we generally will push into where the energy in the room is pointing. What do we think the trend? What categories do we think we have opportunity in? What looks like the room has huge believer in energy, whether it's culture, whether it's movement. And I feel the energy of these creative people. And if everyone's really excited about something, I believe that they will tell that story with that same level of energy and excitement, and that the consumer will respond.
Yeah, it's interesting because what we're talking about is kind of lightning in a bottle moments, but actually it's kind of like you create your own luck if you're operating on all these different levers at the same time, right?
True, and I think we have to be willing to continue to push it and push ourselves. You could say, okay, Young Miko she's Puerto Rican. She's singing in Spanish. She's rapping in Spanish. The lyrics aren't colorful, but she is so creative, so compelling, so interesting, has so much confidence, and embodies a lot of the things that we really love in Gap, where you can make it yours and make it your own. Plus, surrounding her with this incredible dancers, cast, choreographers, director. I mean, like, the amount of talent that it takes also, there's stories behind every one of those. And when those amplify, yes, the video in and of itself, I'm super proud of, and I think it's just beautiful piece of creative. But the amount of stories,
it's like avant-garde almost, like that video.
It is.
With all of the dancers in the background and monochrome and all of that.
Edit and the edit's incredible. But I think the actual storytelling about when you go through our team, the directors, the dancers, the cast, every story amplifies when it's told because they bring them their full selves. And I think that's where the magic has happened. I think we saw that from, back in 2023 with some of our earlier collabs, to the marketing really starting to take a turn in 2023. And then certainly through 24, Linen Moves, Tyla, the stories have been getting stronger and stronger.
We have another one to announce, which is that there's the Victoria Beckham collaboration. Tell us about that. What's going on there?
Okay, that is exciting. And every collab needs to feel like it's a new thing. It's new, it's unexpected, it's cool, it's a vibe. And so we're really excited to bring Gap and Victoria Beckham together with this collab that's launching imminently.
Yeah, tell me, what is the vibe?
Well, any collab we do, it's about taking the Gap icons, things we're famous for, and then reinventing them, reinterpreting them through the creative of the partner. And when those two brands come together and create something that feels like only they could have created it is where the magic happens. And Victoria Beckham has really been pushing into the fashion universe. Obviously, she has a whole beauty line that's been very successful, but in the fashion universe, it's clean lines, it's sophisticated, it's really modern, but still wearable. And I think that modern chic lines and approach to design that Victoria Beckham has, combined with some of the pieces, denim and twills and khakis that we're known for, when combined, are very cool.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the fashion element, that kind of high fashion element, because you have Zach Posen, who is at Gap Inc. He worked primarily on Old Navy, but he does have Gap Studio, where he brings this sort of much more elevated approach. And I think that's really interesting because, to my earlier point, you're sort of playing in many different registers. Like, you're really nailing the comfy sweats that you want to be in all day. And then there's like red carpet looks, right? And somehow they're both within the same universe. So tell me what's going on with Zach Posen and what's going on with Gap Studio and how that fits into all of this.
Zach has been a force, in the company where he's a creative force, so connected and so sort of widely known, and just a fun personality to begin with, and has brought the brand onto red carpet for the first time. We have not had access.
Interesting.
We haven't had access to the red carpet where he's designing one of one for, Met Gala, the Oscars, Grammys, and it's really fun for the brand to be showing up in that way, and often in ways that tie to some core that happens in Gap, but it can be very creative on top of that. And then in addition to those one-off, we have brought small capsules periodically of Gap Studio as well. So it's just another layer to the story, adding dimension to the stories we're telling.
You're in this like amazing moment and everybody is paying attention. And so, like, the question is, like, how do you keep that attention, right? So like with the question of like collabs, for instance, how do you how do you make sure that you're continuing to keep people's attention without sort of oversaturating?
If we have amazing creatives and we put them in a position where we can trust the creatives to keep pushing and keep driving, and not overburden them with bureaucracy, with, I know you did that, but now I want you to go prove the ROI of everything. If we start doing that, we're going to slow down. I think if we just keep pushing the creative, we will stay in this, moment of heat right now. And it is a balance of telling brand stories and then collabs layered onto that. If I thought the only story we were telling was collabs, then I wouldn't think it would be fulfilling the promise of the brand and what we have. But when I see the amount of innovation we do just on our absolute 5-pocket jeans, in the hoodie, different shapes, silhouettes, washes, color palettes. I mean, we have so many stories that are brand stories that I'm really confident that it helps punctuate and keep things interesting to layer on collabs. But we have to be excited about it. And that's really my true test is how excited are people right now about this? And if I don't feel the energy is there, then we won't do it. But if the energy is, then we don't overthink it and we let them go. That's where we move into the sweet spot of redefining how the collabs are going to work, redefining how the brand can show up to the consumer. And if we keep doing that, telling fresh stories and surprising the consumer in a way that feels like 100% natural to Gap, then we'll win.
And last question. So you've been at this now for a long time, like as a merchant, and then here at Gap, sort of working on this turnaround. This is a big question, but what's next? Like, what are you excited about? What are you working on now?
I'm thrilled to have seen the brand in one heyday and then seen some tougher years, and now be in a position where people are really talking about the brand in the current and future versus, oh, this is what used to be. So to have the brand in this position gives us this foundation to build on. And for what's next is continuing to push in the destination, categories where we are, playing in new space, in new categories like beauty, bags. There's so much more opportunity for this brand that when we have our mojo, we are a force. And I think we're starting to see that and the team sort of believing it. And the energy, the confidence, the conviction, and the entrepreneurial and innovation kind of spirit is giving me a lot of optimism.
I'm excited too. And I know that you've been thinking a lot about my individual store, my Harvard Square Gap,
Yes.
which I've been going to for like 15 years now. I will keep visiting, and I can't wait to see all the changes that are going to happen.
Good. Well, yes, more changes coming. We refixtured. We're doing a more remodel. We're continuing to think about it. So I'll be getting a lot of input from you throughout.
That sounds perfect. Thank you so much for being here. This is wonderful.
Great to talk to you. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Okay, we're back with Tanya, and it's time to wrap up the show with Keeping Tabs. This is where each one of us shares a story, trend, or piece of pop culture we're following right now, business or otherwise. So, Tanya, since you're our guest, what are you keeping tabs on?
We're already like about a week out, and it feels like news that is dying, but I'm still quite enthralled. I don't know. I know, Josh, you said you are a Bravo head. Are you a Summer House head? And also Elizabeth?
I'm not a Summer House head. This is the franchises I can't get it. My Bravo blind spots are Summer House, Southern Charm. I think those are really the two main ones.
The more emerging, yeah. I'm also like an OG, like Housewives. That's kind of their staple, their bread and butter. But yeah, are you guys aware of the Summer House, the drama?
No,
I'm aware of Summer House and Kyle and Paige Amanda got divorced, right?
These are the concerning characters.
Okay.
Amanda. There's a Kyle, there is a West Wilson, and there's a Sierra. And essentially, were you guys aware of what happened with Vanderpump Rules a few years ago? The whole Scandival?
Yeah. Scandival. I'm familiar with the Vanderpump
I have
universe.
children. I am completely...
Yes, exactly.
I'm with you here. I am locked in.
As we've determined, Elizabeth is a normal person. She's got normal hobbies and like normal screen time. I do not have a normal screen time. I'm embarrassed to
Hey, as long as I'm not at Taylor Lorenz territory, I think
I am
fine.
veering into Taylor. I can't even, I know. But this is kind of being both a digital culture tech journalist and a child of the internet and a neurodivergent person. Like, it's just, you have to like, there are some rabbit holes you have to really pull me out of. And this is one of them. Essentially, just to kind of give you a quick synopsis, one, and there's a racial component that I won't even get into. That makes it kind of interesting and serious and academic.
And Bravo always handles those things super well.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. But I think that kind of the headline is there was a friendship betrayal among women friends. Sierra was really into this guy named West Wilson. They were almost dating. And they're all in one big friend group, of course. And then Amanda, who just got divorced from her longtime husband, who's also kind of a POS. I don't know if I'm allowed to just say that. You can cut around that, but like unsavory, unlikable, not a great husband. But she ends up, after the divorce, getting with her best friend's, Sierra guy, the guy who they've been on and off. Of all the people in the world, right? Like, to go and hook up with your like close women friends ex or someone who you knew they were really into, who like just back to back, just like kind of the level of betrayal of all the people to date. Like, that because it was boggles me. Like, sometimes, with reality TV, it is with Bachelor people too. I don't know if you guys are Bachelor, but every time there's a reality TV cast, they all become best friends with each other and only date exclusively in each other's universes. And it baffles me. Like, it kind of makes sense business-wise, for your brand to, for gossip and whatever, build buzz. But in this way that harms your reputation.
Oh my God. I'm so here for that drama. Sierra, great on Traitors a couple seasons ago. So that's like my little insight.
Traitors is low-key. I started and it's become amazing and I've been saving it. It's amazing television.
You gotta do Traitors. It's great. It's terrific. Liz, what are you keeping tabs on?
Okay, so we talked about this at the beginning of the show, and the headlines, but I am just fascinated with what happened with Allbirds. So as a fashion journalist, I started
So
covering
weird. It's so weird.
Allbirds right at the start, like before they launched. They sent me, a sample of the weird wool shoes, right, that were like completely radical. And okay, admittedly, they were ugly. I mean, like they've always been ugly. Although at the time, Yeezys were really big, right, when they launched. And, there's that kind of minimalist kind of aesthetic. So I understand what they were trying to do. And at the same time, I do think it was pretty amazing what they did in terms of material innovation, right? Like the idea of taking a material that is sustainable and that had not been used in shoes, putting them into the shoes. And then what they did over the next decade, they did all kinds of really interesting innovation with footwear. Footwear is a hugely environmentally unsustainable industry. The world produces way too many shoes. And they were really trying to tackle it with technology and with sustainable innovation. And I really give them a lot of credit for that. But watching the company just slowly unravel in terms of not being able to find a good business strategy to keep them going, that was something that I was covering for a long time. I do think they innovated a lot in terms of the materiality, and they shared their innovations with the rest of the industry. That was really cool. They did not really innovate in terms of the aesthetic. And in the most recent story I did about them just a few months ago, they were beginning to do this. They had produced these like newer collections of shoes that looked really cool, really like vintage and retro, kind of inspired by like the New Balance retro sneakers that are really popular right now. They were beginning to do this work while still using a bunch of sustainable material. It seemed like it was like it had a pathway to coming out of this mess. And then now they're an AI company. Like, what the hell? Like, what happened? I want to know, like, what happened.
But it also helped their stock. Like it helped their
Yeah, that's why it happened.
That
This
was
is the thing.
crazy. Yeah, that was crazy that when they pivoted.
How can you take a sneaker company and put it on the public markets and then basically turn it into a completely different company that is not what the original investors were investing in? And now it turns out that your sneaker asset has turned into an AI asset. Like, what does that even mean? How is that legal? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
And it's working. And that's the craziest part. It's like it actually helped. It actually helped.
Yeah.
Sure, their stock rose. But like, if now they are seriously New Bird AI is the new company name, and like, I don't even know what they're making. Like, they're
So
investing
dumb.
in they're investing in like compute or like the data centers or something. The point is, like, the amount of money that they have relative to the other AI players is so little that, like, I don't even know what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, it's like compared to like the other AI companies that are so much more capitalized than they are. Like, this is not a long-term winning strategy. Okay,
Probably not, but making shoes also wasn't going to be a long-term winning strategy for them.
yeah.
And I also yes, they're not going to have as much capital, but if they did want to say raise more capital or be taken private or I know any number of other things, I think at least in the short, maybe medium term, this probably extends the life cycle of Allbirds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just it's all about generating shareholder value.
It
Yeah.
is just really. And like, what's going to happen to the shoes? Like, what is going to happen to the Allbird shoe?
I don't know.
As a reporter, like, I hope that the message that comes out of all of this is that like the D2C era brands had terrible business strategies, right? They were not focused on profitability. Like, there were a lot of issues with them from a business perspective. I hope that the narrative that people take away is not that it's not worth investing in sustainable innovation, because I feel like that can be the thing that comes out of this huge mess. And I don't think that that's the right answer, because in a lot of ways, like longer term, like while in the short term, it is more expensive to be investing in these more sustainable materials, longer term, there are ways that the prices of these things are going to go down, that, that people are going to eventually, like, after this like horrible, stressful period that we're in, people are going to be like interested in sustainable technology again. And I just hope that the insights and like the technologies that they developed all kinds of really interesting technologies for the footwear industry, that those continue to persist, that somebody's buying that IP and like disseminating it throughout the industry. But yeah, RIP Allbirds.
I will wrap this up with a very quick, this has been another episode of Oops, All Tangents, which is great. So I'll close this up. I'm going to stick on the Bravo reality TV show game. I got to bring it back to this. I've been rewatching Real Housewives of Beverly Hills from the beginning, again, which I hadn't done. And I just have to like shout out the greatest reality television star of all time, Lisa Vanderpump's dog, Jiggy. Jiggy is the cutest thing in the world. I know, R.I.P. Jiggy. Oh, God, I love that dog so
Lisa
much.
Vanderpump, also good.
Also, yeah,
Bravo
Lisa
player.
Vanderpump
Top
is a great
Bravo player. Yes.
top tier. I mean, I honestly, like, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills might have, like, in terms of, like, pound for pound stars that they've launched from that, Kyle Richards and Lisa Vanderpump and Lisa Rinna, Erica Jane, Dorit Kemsley, like, just, like, banger after banger after banger of reality TV star. But Jiggy stands above all of them. So R.I.P. Jiggy, you're the cutest dog I've ever seen in my life. And that's a nice bright note to end this show on. Tanya, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
Our show is produced by Blake Odom, Sam Gebauer, Hawa Atori, and Mariam Kibaruidze. Editing by Matt Toder, mix and sound design by Tad Wadhams and Nicholas Torres, and our executive producer is me. Remember again to subscribe, rate, and review, and we will see you next week.